dina di dina dina di dina din tuk dina tuna katta dak tuk dina din din da din din da tuk duna katta tuk dina.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Odisha Design Week. Our next speaker is the highly acclaimed Red Dot Design winner, multiple award winning Paul Sandip, and he's here to talk about his industrial design work. Paul, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, at Odisha Design Week. And thank you for the warm welcome, Suresh. Well, my topic for today is actually innovation by observation. And why I chose this topic today is actually I'm very much, indebted to the state of Orissa where I was brought up. Although I wasn't born there, but brought up, and a lot of things which I had observed, which surprisingly was also seen as glimpses in the video which just preceded my talk, was that there are a lot of memories and a lot of things which I've picked up from Orissa. And one of the most important things which I had picked up as a child was the art of observation. So let me start my presentation and share and take you through my journey and how I actually converted some of my observations into actual products. Is the screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible. Visible, yes.
The entire screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I'll start with a thought which probably I had gathered from my father as a child. And the thought was that a sketch makes a memory indelible. And what used to happen is that whenever I used to go out to any place, in a new place, or with my friends or with family, and whenever we used to come back, my father always asked me to do one thing. He always asked me to sketch whatever I had seen or experienced, and also write a short anecdote about it. And that's what I had been doing for the past, I think, 42, 43 years. I've stuck to it, and these are some of the sketches which are actually from during my stay at Bhubaneshwar, where I studied in school and I was brought up. And some of the sketches, very detailed observations. So what actually it inculcated me in me was that the fact, when you look at things very minutely, and you tend to be very observant, there are a lot of details which you get to see and which you take back with you along, and as a memory you cherish them later. But while I was doing that, I also started sketching objects, because I didn't stop at only sketching places or events, but I started sketching products and started seeing the minute details and every possible detail of the product. And of course, as a kid, I did not know that I would end up become an industrial designer one day. But somehow the act of observation had a very deep impact in me. And in fact, this is a sketch entirely from memory. When I had left my house in 1993, this sketch was done in 2017. But this house I had last stayed and been experienced there in 1993. So I till date I remember each and every nook and corner, and that's how I try to sketch that. And so this kind of it definitely holds true that a sketch makes a memory indelible. And from there on, once I moved to Calcutta, I actually started thinking of. By then, I had actually, I would say, cultivated the art of illustrating and storytelling. So while I was studying in Calcutta Boys in Kolkata, once we came back from Odisha to Calcutta, West Bengal. So one fine day after my school, I planned to visit the Statesman House, which is a leading newspaper, English daily in Kolkata. And I approached the editor there, and I experienced and expressed my interest in writing about everyday life and short stories. And uh, I was really excited when I was given a chance to do so. And the next couple of years, I started uh, writing about observations from everyday life, stuff like how do you stop your pen from being taken away? What happens to the junk which you actually hold back in your home because of its nostalgic value? Things like that. So if you see, there's a transition from me being observing and writing about places and events which I used to visit to objects to everyday life. So there's a slow transition if you notice closely. And thereon, I went to Maharashtra, to Nagpur, to actually pursue my electrical engineering. And there, I didn't let this passion die off. I started, fueling it up again and started my own pocket column called "Not As You See," with again an English daily, quite a popular English daily in Maharashtra called the Lokmat Times. And there I started, writing very minuscule, like small objects or observations from everyday life, and I would make a fun of those things and criticize or talk about things. While doing this, actually, I had also taken up uh, a job in the night shift, and I had to work from 8 in the evening till 3 o'clock in the morning. And while coming back from there, I would observe a very interesting thing. People actually started, if you closely observe at the wee hours, normally there is a thing that, like, the newspaper boys would collect all the papers and pack it up and roll it up in their bags and go out to actually distribute them. And what happens is, what I observed was that this is a humongous task, that you roll up the paper and you throw up to various levels of the buildings. It's quite a difficult task. So I was struck with an idea, and this was the first product idea which I had sketched and created, which was a newspaper dispenser. Quite silly, but it's of great value to me because it was my first, uh, I would say, point in turning point in life, where I had realized that although I was a cartoonist and I was observing things in everyday life and making fun of things, but I could be one person, the person who could do some change and bring some quality to everyday life by designing everyday objects probably. And it actually won me the my first design award at a college fest in Ramtek, and that was a big impetus for me actually to further look into the career option of being an industrial designer quite seriously. So from here, I think today, after 21 years later, uh, I've been able to, or I'd say, managed to design more than 700 products, winning over 34 awards, and with a clientele spread across 20 countries. So it's been a very enriching and a satisfying journey so far. And that's what I'm going to share with you, how my observation actually helps me innovate in everyday life. So the basic thought here is that I don't look at things. You don't just see them. You have to look very closely. And how do you be very observant? And how do you actually capture the essence of everyday life in its nuances? So, like, let me show you a very mundane example. This is a cloth line where you kind of dry your clothes out in the sun, and these are those pegs which you use. Now, if you observe or notice closely that there is a problem with this. The spring leaves rust marks at the edges of the clothes, and also these products have a very small life because they are mostly in plastic and they get brittle out in the sun. But why don't we notice it? And there's a very interesting reason behind it, and that's called habituation. Habituation is something which actually stops us from thinking of it as a problem while it actually is. So this is the product which I had designed. Here, the product actually does not have any any metal insert. So the question of leaving a rust mark is completely avoided here. And also, it is completely monolithic, and it has uh, dual jaws actually. So even if one of the jaws break, the other is still functional. And that's how you I try to improve the durability of an everyday life mundane object, a cloth line clip, and which actually won me the Red Dot Design Award back in 2010. So seeing the invisible, it's easy to solve a problem that everyone sees, but it's really hard to solve a problem which almost no one sees. And let me cite you an example for that. Like if you see this, we probably tend to use these two products independently, probably on a regular basis. We have many products which run on two-pin plugs, and we also use these kind of multi-plugs to increase the number of outlets from a three-pin plug on the wall. So what I had observed and was a nagging problem was that the two-pin plug would tend to fall off because it was flat on the bottom, flat on the top, and flat on the front. The two-pin plug would actually get loose and fall off quite often and creating quite a nuisance. The solution which I had provided was pretty simple. I just added an angle of 40 degrees. So now it is not a flat bottom, it is at an angle of 40 degrees. What happened was that the plug was actually falling off due to gravity. And now what I had created was a gravity lock. So I used the problem as the solution here. And this is the final product. And it's one of the best sellers on Amazon. And this was the first prototype which we had created. And it really is quite popular these days and sold at most electrical shops or outlets. You find it regularly. This brings me to my next thought, which is the solution lies with the problem, and I call it contextual innovation. So, as I was talking about, being very observant and being very contextual. So, I'll give another example, and also that every problem is an opportunity in disguise. And this came across while we were doing a project at Whirlpool. The marketing team came up with a very interesting brief. They said, design a refrigerator for us that looks taller than a competition. And the only catch here was that we couldn't increase the cooling capacity. So it means the cooling chamber size could not be increased. So without that, how do you actually make the refrigerator taller? So what we did was started visiting homes and started observing what are actually people doing with their refrigerators. If you see this image, you'll notice there is a uh, wooden chalky kind of a thing kept here on top of which the refrigerator is placed. And not only one, but many homes revealed a similar kind of objects being used. These are plastic stands. These are all plastic stands. This is a wooden stand. And also another observation which I've made was that people were storing onions and potatoes in various different plastic baskets, and this was also consuming quite a considerable amount of space in the kitchen. So how about combining both the utilities and create something like a utility drawer Well, that's me along with the structural engineers in Ranjangaon Whirlpool factory. Yeah, so this is we me doing the user testing. So what we created was actually a utility drawer, which could actually store your onions and potatoes without a refrigeration, because these objects do not require refrigeration, but they're often used along with other vegetables to while you're using uh, or while you're cooking in the kitchen. So this was the final product, which was launched by Whirlpool, and it's called the utility drawer. That's how it looked. And if you see, the product definitely looked taller, and we had satisfied the marketing team and also created a utility for the consumer. And of course, now it has become a standard in the trade, with most of the brands having this feature as one of the prominent features in their refrigerators. Solutions are closer than you think, and actually sometimes hidden in plain sight. I'll share another example while doing a project with LG Electronics. Design a India-specific LCD television. Now, how does one actually design something specific to India when the product is very global? So we need to understand that the product might be global, but the way people use it would vary in different countries, in different regions, different locations. So we need to understand the context here again. So what we started off is by observing the buying pattern and what are they looking for. So when we closely observe that there was a gradual shift of people putting their televisions on the furniture or a table to wall. So an LCD, the main attraction of an LCD TV was actually that it could be fixed, mounted on a wall. So that was a very interesting observation which we had made. And when we went across the country visiting various places, this is a photograph from a house in Hyderabad. Uh, we observed very interesting thing that people had started putting the television on the wall, but are using some jugaad techniques to actually keep the DTH box. Because what happens is that when you had your CRT TV, you had a furniture piece below it where you could store your remotes, you could store your DTH box and all of that. Suddenly, when the television goes on the wall, you don't need that furniture piece, so you remove that. But you still need a place to store the DTH box and the remote and all of that. So how do you do that? So this is what people were doing. Like it's all jugaad and how they're doing it. Another very interesting observation, a very minute observation, was that if you look at this is the neck of the television stand, which is still stuck here. So when we inquired that what happened to the stand, the consumer, said that we have no clue. Probably it's in the storeroom or we've thrown it away. So if you observe from a manufacturer's point of view, it's a huge waste for the company who's manufacturing the television with the stand, but the stand is of no use. Then I was struck with an idea. What if I could convert the stand into a shelf where you could actually store your DTH box and stuff like that? It took almost over 6 months to really figure out how the locking of the neck and the stand would be. But this is me with the mock-up team in Seoul, LG headquarters, and we created something was very unique to the Indian context, and it was launched by LG Electronics in 2013. It was called the Transform LED TV, and it was proudly said designed for India. Genuine needs are often felt but seldom spelt, and I try to solve them through voluntary simplicity, which is my mantra of actually uncomplicating things. We might have faced this problem on a very regular basis, like twisting and fighting with the ice tray to pull out the ice cubes. In fact, companies have gone to greater extents to complicate it more with more twisting mechanisms and all that stuff, just for a simple action, which is pulling out a cube of ice. So when we were approached by a company to design an ice tray, we took a step back and we questioned that are we solving the right problem, or is there anything else we could do? So in fact, my wife Suhasini, who is my co-designer. We had a discussion and we figured out that let's go back many steps back and start with the ice itself. So we started understanding why does this problem happen? That why do the ice cube get stuck to the tray? The answer was again very simple here. It's a cuboid. Water expands when it is frozen, and that's why it gets stuck on all the sides, and that's why you have to do all the twisting and turning thing. So what we did was very, very simple. We went back to the basic shape of an iconic water drop and made it hemispherical from the bottom. So what happened here was that when the ice was frozen, the pressure exerted from the bottom was such that it actually popped the ice up a few millimeters high, and you could easily scoop it up. So it was once the ice was frozen, you can see that all the cubes are pretty loose fit; they're not snug or tightly fit to it. So at the end of the day, not only we had created a very unique design of an ice tray, but we created a very refreshing look for the ice itself. And I think that's what I wanted to share. And I'm going to leave you with a thought here that stay rooted and be relevant. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. That's a very short and sweet presentation, but a deeply insightful one.
Thank you.
So here's my first question to you.
Yeah.
What makes a good client? What makes a great client? And what makes an outstanding client?
Well, I have experienced all three of them over a past span of 16 years. And I think I'll start with the great. A great client is no more a client, he's a friend. And he feels that he can, entrust you to create something which will benefit his business goals. And he leaves no stone unturned to make you feel comfortable. That is what is a true sign of a great client, and I've had many of them. The next is the good client. The good client is very clear about what they want, but yet they come to us uh, with an expectation that if you have an expertise, you would actually improve or build upon their vision. So I think a good client is one who also has very good clarity about what they want. And the third one is that the first thing they ask is how much would it cost, without even knowing what has to be done and what level of expertise is required and what is their vision. They are only worried about how much are they going to shell out.
Okay, then my next question is what makes a really bad client?
Well, I think a bad client, I wouldn't say I haven't experienced them. I have experienced quite a few of them as well. Uh, they would be like, they would hire an expert, but every stage they'll want you to be just a operator. They want to design. A bad client is one who wants to design after hiring an expert designer.
Okay. You have a very crisp way of identifying problems. Now, how much of that problem identification is done by the client themselves, and how much is it of you and your team redefining the problem?
Well, actually, most of the times clients come with a probable solution to their problem, which they might have seen somewhere or would have experienced somewhere, but mostly those solutions are not contextual enough. Like, for example, they might want to do something for the Indian context, but they've seen something similar being done in the US. Let's imagine. So they would want that, can we do something like that? So the first question which I asked them, that why do you think that the same solution which is applicable elsewhere is going to work here? And then they are kind of they get into that thinking mode, and they come back to me and said that I think we will just tell you our problem and leave the solution on to you. So I also help them identify the problems, because I ask a very interesting question: what is your business objective? And once I understand that clearly, I help them actually take the shortest possible route, which will help them achieve that vision which they are expecting.
Do you think more designers should speak the language of business, of Excel sheets and numbers and production targets and sales targets?
No, I think they're already surrounded by people who can talk in numbers. I
Okay.
think they need people who can talk about emotions, about empathy, about feelings which we can evoke through design.
Okay, but you are aligned with their business goals. It's not just about empathy and feelings for the
Of
sake of
course.
empathy and feelings.
See, because at the end of the day, a business becomes successful when it connects well with the consumer. And the consumer at the end of the day is only interested in the benefit of the product and the good experience while using the product. They're not interested how hard you worked on the technology front. They're not interested in that.
It's like a great movie. Nobody cares how much effort it took to build a set design and the costumes. You care
Exactly.
about the story.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Paul Sandeep, that was a very crisp, short, and effective presentation. And may I add, lovely sketches, both from your childhood and later on. Beautiful drawings and sketches from you. We hope to see you in person in the next edition of Odisha Design Week.
Definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Thank you.
day.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, that brings us to a slightly early tea break. We're going to take a break for tea and to do some speed networking. We're going to be back here at 4:30 p.m. where you'll meet Aniruddha Jha. See you at 4:30.